The new Marvel Studios produced Spider-Man animated series Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man has debuted on Disney+, so let's talk about it. While I'm talking, be sure to join me down below in the comments section. Let me know, what did you think about the 2-episode premiere of Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man? Now, a number of critics were given access to the entire series, so their reviews are of the full season. I was not given early access, so I am reviewing the 2 episodes that you also were able to see over the last couple of days. Now, going into this show, I actually wasn't particularly excited. When they first announced it, many years back, it was called Spider-Man Freshman Year, and it was a prequel to Tom Holland's Spider-Man, showing what he was doing essentially before his movies started. That was very interesting to me because it was in canon, it was the sacred timeline, and it was a prequel, and the limitations of that time frame, as well as what you couldn't do, is what made it interesting to me. But as they started developing the show, they thought that those restrictions were too restricting and they couldn't have enough fun, so they decided to set it in its own timeline. For me, that made me dramatically less excited for the show. The thing is, there's already a bunch of Spider-Man animated shows from the last 20 years that many of you have told me are awesome that I haven't watched yet. So another non-sacred timeline Spider-Man animated show just isn't as exciting to me as a sacred timeline prequel Spider-Man series. So I was interested but not particularly excited, and I checked it out largely because I have kids and they seem interested in it. So here we are. What did I think about the first 2 episodes? Let's get started talking about the good. And generally speaking, I found this to be a very charming couple of episodes. In the current climate, the current context of superhero stories where there's so many grown-up superheroes and these gigantic teams battling massive threats, one of the ways you stand out is by telling a smaller story about a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man and a kid who's still in high school. And that to me is what is fun about this. It is very much this high school soap opera. Even recently, I've been rewatching Smallville, the old Superman show about him in high school with my daughter. And a lot of what she likes about the show is all the soap opera, the high school politics. And so we start watching this, and right out of the gate, it's a very high school Peter Parker, that there's a girl that he has a crush on, and he's battling inside of himself like, wait a minute, I'm brave enough to battle a supervillain and stop crime and jump in front of cars and battle criminals with guns, but I can't walk up and talk to a girl? That's fun, and it takes something that's very detached from most of your experiences. Like, I, of course, have had Spider-Man powers and swung through the Big Apple on spider webs from devices I've made, but most people can't relate to that, but everyone can relate to these little high school scenarios of being too nervous to talk to someone that you're interested in. It's very universal, and it grounds this larger than life story. And I think that's what it does really well, is that our characters, it allows them to feel multidimensional, like they're real people. Even as they set up the guy that ends up with the girl, you think they're heading in one direction with him kind of being this jerk or whatever, and then it like pauses to like give us just enough information about him to make him a person that exists. He's not just a foil for Peter Parker. He's a person that exists within a universe that has layers, complexity, his own history, and it treats characters in that fashion. Thus, everything is a little bit more believable and relatable in a story filled with all sorts of fantastical elements. From the trailers, I wasn't particularly crazy about the animation style, and a lot of people watched the first 2 episodes and didn't really care for it. I'll say I actually dug it quite a bit, where it very much is going back to this classic comic book look, going back to the original 1960s Spider-Man comics and the drawing style, the color scheme, even the fashion sense of Peter Parker. It's very much this throwback look, but then done with the techniques of today that's you're able to do 3D animation with these 2D looking drawings with the strong lines, single coloring, and then it's 3-dimensional. And I found that interesting, like just this very much a throwback style, but with modern technology. And then likewise, it leans into the comic book nature of it, where at times they're doing paneling and things like that, that just gives it a fresh style that stands out, and it feels old-fashioned while doing things that are so modern. I like that about it. Even the way that it, like I said, treated the characters is a very modern, more detailed, nuanced take on characters in a 30-minute per episode animated show. That it feels very old-fashioned, but very modern at the same time. And then with like the Peter Parker characterization, he feels very much like this innocent kid trying to use his powers to stop evil, and at the same time, very quickly having like a real soft heart to him. So there's just this little episode in there of him stopping a burglar and addressing the fact that not all burglars are driven purely by greed. And so stops the crime, but also pauses to be like, hey, maybe don't be super mean to this person. They weren't just trying to do this maliciously. There's a good sob story behind why they did this. Just like those little details that add a little bit more texture to each little situation that we kind of see, and the character, that it's not just as simple as black and white. He is trying to stop crime bad, but not all crimes have the same motivation behind them. It's just little details that add more to each little scenario that plays out. And we're only 2 episodes in, and we know there are going to be quite a few little cameos from different Marvel characters. Very early on, we get some Doctor Strange in here, and I'll have more thoughts on that in just a little bit. But even just kind of doing a Doctor Strange that has a classic mustache, just seeing it was like, I like this. I like kind of having this populated universe. Once again, we'll get to that in just a second. I've got many mixed feelings on some of this stuff, but it wasn't just Doctor Strange showed up. They had fun with Doctor Strange, of how he was used, having his powers play out. The characterization had its own flavor to it, that I just liked what they were doing and how they used the character. So generally speaking, I had a good time with the 2 episodes. It was a good start, and as someone that wasn't super excited, it was like, yeah, I think you're doing something interesting, fun with the character that's worth checking out. I did have some more thoughts here. Let's move on to the mixed aspects of the show. And the big one here is its unusual connection to the MCU, which is to say, it is its own timeline. But then they do a number of things to overtly reference the MCU. Very obviously, we have a segment that is done to almost be shot for shot a segment of Captain America Civil War, until it's revealed it's not Tony Stark, it's Harry Osborn. And it's clever. It's a fun little twist. But I think it also makes the whole show just feel like an extended or a spin-off from What If. That's what this is. We're just doing an extended What If situation. That as soon as you phrase it that way, and you put it in that category, we're just doing What If with Spider-Man, and what if he wasn't recruited by Tony Stark, but Harry Osborn. It just, like, even if it was just totally detached, I don't think I would feel this way. But as soon as you make it a What If series, it just feels like it lessens its impact and how meaningful it is. It's neither its own standalone thing, just telling the story that they wanted to tell, and it's not the sacred timeline, it's this hybrid in the middle. On the one hand, some of those little moments are fun. On the other hand, it just always feels like this is the second tier. It's not the real thing. We're just playing around with what if scenarios. So we'll see how this series goes and how that fully plays out. But like I like had these two big emotions, purely true mixed feelings. As soon as they did that, of like, oh, cool. Oh, but also you're admitting we're just doing what if right now. And I don't know about that. And somewhat related to this is my big bad. Let's move on to the bad. And I suppose this is kind of getting into spoiler territory of sorts. So I'll try to be a little bit vague about it, but at the same time, I'm going to get into specifics. But I just don't understand that if we're doing what we're doing here, and we're kind of tying it to the MCU in some senses of mirroring some things, I just don't understand why we would change his origin story. I just don't get it at all. Like, Spider-Man has a very classic, iconic origin story. And now it's about a portal, multiverse hopping Doctor Strange or something like that. In a I don't like that. There's nothing about that that's like, oh, that's fun and interesting. It's like, what? Why did we change that of all things? If it doesn't have this lingering meaning to it, why is that what we're doing? Why are we changing that detail? And likewise, if we're going to do this, we can change things up and we don't have to fit neatly into the MCU timeline. Of all the things to lock in on, we still don't do Uncle Ben. Like, we're still excluding him. He died before all of this. I think that's weird. Like, the MCU aversion to Uncle Ben is strange. I get you didn't want to just copy it, like credit where credit's due, No Way Home. You found a subversive way to do the with great power comes great responsibility line in a different context and use Aunt May in an interesting, like, you did that. But now that we're doing this different version that's not canon, this is your chance to play around with Uncle Ben in Marvel Studios stuff that's not sacred timeline, but it's in multiverse-y type stuff. And they still killed him off before. And like, that to me is another one. It's like, we're changing the origin story, but we're keeping that we killed Uncle Ben beforehand. I do not understand these choices. If you want to play around in the playground and have more freedom, not be locked into what MCU canon did, and you didn't want Uncle Ben? You don't want to do anything there? I don't get it. Like, that's just a big disappointment to me and just a choice that I don't understand. But that's to say that the overall vibe of it, I really enjoyed. The characterizations, the feel, the vibe, like I said, the look of it, all that's good. The way it ties to the MCU and some of these specific choices on canon things, that's where I was irritated. It's like, I don't get why you'd exclude that or include that. Those are weird choices. So those are my issues with it. Those are the things I loved about it. Generally speaking, very positive on it. Had a good time with it. Excited to keep watching it with my kids over the next month, and they seem to have a good time with it too. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section, and keep talking movies and TV too much.